All right, I know I said we were gonna pull out the spark plugs and put oil in there, but I think we could probably get on the power steering pump here and see if we can't move the motor back and forth a little bit. We'll probably hit a little bit of compression one way or the other, but at least it'll tell us if the motor's free. After that, we'll go ahead and get right into labeling the spark plug wires so we know exactly where they go back, and then we'll pull out the spark plugs. We'll kind of keep an eye on what cylinder they came out of. If any one of those is discolored or looks different from the others, that could be a clue to something that's going on inside the engine, and maybe we should look a little bit different, a little bit further into that cylinder. Again, using that bore scope, and also potentially using a compression tester just to make sure that all the cylinders are equal. But we'll do that down the road once we kind of get the oil out and really start spinning the motor over, building oil pressure, because we need to make sure we have oil pressure long before we even get gas coming up to the distributor here, the fuel distributor, and see if it'll fire. You ready? Here we go. Oh, it's free. Let's see how far we can go in that direction. All right, the pulley's spinning. Let's see if we can go back the other way. Pulley's spinning that way. All right, so we did get a little bit of back and forth. That's to be expected. Again, these rings are kind of frozen in these cylinders. They need a little bit of oil in there, and then we can get this moving. But at least this shows us that the pistons are moving inside the cylinders. Presumably the valve train is moving as well, and we may be in luck. All right, we're gonna try and take off the spark plug wires. These are notoriously a pain. They've got rubber ends that then go down into metal shrouds with rubber inside. If you just yank these by the wire pulls right out the middle, and then you're buying a whole new spark plug wire set. So I'm gonna use a long pair of needle nose. We're gonna kind of get down here and get onto the metal part of this and wiggle it. That one actually came loose. So there's our first one. Let's get down on the second one here. Got it, that's two off. All right, so we got this first one, we're gonna label as 1. These are all on the right-hand side of the motor. In this point, it doesn't matter which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mark this in 2 spots in case we wipe it off. And we'll keep going. Got it. Of course it fell. All right. So here's our first one. This is actually Bosch. All right, there's the third one. Same as the first. All right, there's number 4. Looks good. We're going to move on to the other side. All right, let's pull all these plug wires off on this side. That's a piece of vacuum line. This car relies heavily on vacuum lines. They're all over the place. They run along the firewall. It's literally how the whole HVAC system works. I have no idea where that goes or where it came from. Well, obviously it came from there, but I don't know if it was connected on the other end or not. It was just laying in here. So God only knows. We're gonna have vacuum leaks for days. I'm sure we'll have a video on how to use a smoke machine. That'll be in the future. Let's keep going with spark plugs. I guess while we're sitting here just taking spark plugs out, not really talking about anything. So this is a 1981 380 SL, 3.8 liter V8. It's kind of crazy. A lot of times in this day and age, you have cars that have 4 liters that are 6 cylinders. You have 3.5 liter, 6 cylinders. Spark plugs are out. I haven't figured out what I want to spray down in the cylinders. Maybe some PB Blaster, maybe some WD-40, but we're gonna have to fashion kind of a longer hose to get into the cylinder, as the straws that come on most of those lubricant cans or PB Blaster type cans aren't long enough to get in there, and you just be spraying aimlessly down inside the motor here. So I'm gonna come up with a way to get some oil inside the cylinders and maybe let that sit overnight and then get back onto that power steering pulley and see if we can't get a couple revolutions of the motor here. That would be great. All right, I've come up with a piece of hose and some PB Blaster. Get it back in this back cylinder. And see how she goes. All right, that worked pretty good. We got all 4 of those cylinders with some PB Blaster in it. Let's move over to the other side. You know I can't wait overnight, right? Let's go ahead and put this wrench back on here and see if we can't get some better movement. She's turning. All right, we hit a little hard spot, so every time we come up to that spot, there's probably a little bit of gunk in the cylinder where a piston was sitting. We just kind of rock it back and forth and hopefully go right past it. Here we go. Another big issue with these motors is that they have a single row timing chain. That was its detriment the first go around. So if we look inside the valve cover here, you'll be able to see the camshaft and its lobes. So while I'm turning this, I'm going to feel that the cam is turning while the motor is turning. If it's not, that could be a bad timing chain, which on these motors means the whole motor is bad. I can feel a little bit of movement in the camshaft. Camshafts don't move as much as the crank does. It's like a 1-to-4 ratio. All right, so we've moved that around enough. Let's let that PB Blaster sit overnight. Hopefully that'll work on some of that crud. All right, we're back underneath the car. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the oil and replace the oil filter. Again, we don't know how old this oil is. It's been in here. It looks okay. It's a little dark in color. We may have a little bit of water at the bottom. Again, the oil will sit on top of the water. So we're gonna drain everything out of here, put some fresh oil in there with a new oil filter. And then we'll go ahead and try and hook up a battery and use the starter motor and try and turn this thing over for a little bit. Again, trying to get the rings with some oil on there and try and build some oil pressure. Didn't see any water, but definitely dark color, smells a little gassy and kind of funky. This motor carries 8.5 quarts of oil and has a cartridge style oil filter. So you just pull it out, replace the O-ring and put a new one in there. Alright, got a new oil filter, cartridge inside the housing, new gaskets, new washers, and I filled it up with about 1/2 quart of oil. Got a new crush washer on the bottom of the drain plug. Make sure everything looks okay, clean it up, and then we'll put some oil in it, try and crank her over. All right, let's get her on the ground. All right, let's fill this thing up with some oil. Nothing on the stick yet. Let all that drain to the bottom. All right, we're on the bottom of the stick there. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not actually starting the engine. We've actually got the coil disconnected. We have the fuel lines disconnected. So it is virtually impossible for this car to start. So what I'm gonna do now is go to the back. I've got a jump box, it's pretty big. It's got 2 batteries connected to it. And we're gonna go inside and see if we can't get this to crank over. Make sure we don't see any fire from any of the wires or anything crazy like that. And see if oil pressure doesn't come up. All right, I've got the jump box here. We're going to connect the positive lead, and then we'll connect the negative lead. And again, this is the first time we're putting power to the car. So I've got the key turned off and disconnected the amplifier for the old radio in here. And we should see just a little spark when we connect this, but nothing too crazy. And then we'll go through the car. Hey, the trunk light's on. All right, well, let's go through the car and make sure we don't see anything crazy. There could have been some rodents or some mice inside of here that could have chewed through some wires. We don't want to start a fire on the car just yet, right? All right, everything seems to be okay. We definitely have power to the car now. The car is in neutral. Again, there's no threat of it starting. Let's turn the key on. I actually heard the fuel pump kick on, which is good. So we actually didn't need to test that on the bench. We just tested it. And we're gonna check this oil pressure and see what happens when cranking. Wow, came up. 2 bar, 2.5 bar, almost 3 bars of oil pressure. That's perfect. I don't know metric conversions, but that's gotta be 40 or 60 PSI. That's great. That's awesome news. All right, now that we have oil pressure, I've confirmed that there's no actual visible leaks from anything that we just did. The oil filter gasket can sometimes act funny. That's back together. Nothing's dripping on the bottom end, and I don't see any kind of real leaks yet. We won't know until we actually get the motor fired up. What we need to do now, that oil sat overnight, the PV blaster in the cylinders. So I'm gonna clean up the spark plugs, put all of them back into the motor. Trying to put the spark plugs back in here. It's kind of a weird angle to get to these. A trick that an old mechanic taught me was to take a piece of fuel line that fits over the end of the insulator of the spark plug, just kind of lightly pushes on there. You're then able to use this. It's kind of flexible to get the spark plug in. And once you get a couple threads, you can just yank the hose right back off. Kind of crazy, sitting here putting these spark plugs back in. I realized this is a snap-on socket. Back when I was a mechanic, I worked at Mercedes-Benz of Annapolis. It was formerly known as Benson Motor Cars. I was kind of apprenticing under a couple mechanics there that are still pretty cool. I know one of the guys still today, we still talk. So it's funny, I was buying snap-on tools off the tool truck, and here I am using those same tools on the same car that I used to own. So I referenced this a while ago, but this is a car that I bought right out of boot camp, Marine Corps boot camp. This was back in 2000, probably 01. And I was in the reserves, and I was still kind of working at the Mercedes dealership and driving this car all over the place. And man, it's kind of crazy to have it back here now. I drove it for probably 5 years, and the wife was driving, and the timing chain broke, and the motor was basically trash. We were in between houses at the time, so I sold the car for $1,000. Basically on the side of the road where it broke down, we just put a for sale sign, and it was gone a week later. 20 years later, I was scrolling Facebook Marketplace and happened to see this car pop up. I knew it was her right away. Has those 5-star AMG wheels. I acquired them, let's say, one at a time back when I was working at that Mercedes dealership. And I knew the 5-star AMGs of a CLK 430 was a telltale sign, especially the car was lowered just a little bit. Upon further inspection and a couple more pictures in the ad, I realized that this was my old car, and it was about a week and a half ago. We found it an hour away, went and picked it up and brought it back, and decided to start making all of these videos. Hope you guys are liking all of this. It's kind of nostalgic for me to kind of work on an old car again. I left it in much better condition, I assure you, although the motor was blown up. We'll get it back running, and I know all this dirt and all this crud may annoy you. It annoys me too, but without this motor running, there's no point in having a clean, shiny car. So we'll keep going with this and get all these spark plugs tightened up and continue on.